Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dangerous Rhetoric. This is episode 86. I'm Brentley.
I'm Dan.
And today, before I introduce our amazing guest, Miss Shapeshifter, I wanted to remind everyone to like, comment, subscribe, spread this around if you can. If you can, share this conversation or snippets from this conversation. If you want to make clips and post it on your channel, you guys totally have free range to get this content, clip it up, throw it wherever you want.
And if you want to help us keep doing this, we will gladly take your money. Please donate because
yes, there are donation links in the description.
It definitely can be exhausting.
No longer accepting PayPal, unfortunately, because they are
screw PayPal. But yeah, the culture war can be a lot. Also, we just got our second strike on our YouTube channel.
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But one of our videos was removed, and we might be on the chopping block soon. So we appreciate any support.
Just a reminder, you can also find us on Rumble and Odyssey in case we do vanish from the YouTube space. It is possible.
Yeah, and all that's hosted on dangerousrhetoric.com. So if we ever vanish, just go there and you'll find all of our content. With that said, Brent.
Today, I want to introduce the beautiful, the amazing, the based Shapeshifter, who is a detransitioner who came to our attention after we saw her interview on Blair White. You guys should go check out that interview for more fascinating background on Shape's experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with that. We'll start with that Blair White interview, and maybe we can kind of go over a bit of your backstory. But we also don't want to dwell too much on that either, because we know you went into a lot of detail in that interview, and we can direct people to that interview to go watch it. So, how did you get into contact with Blair, and what made you decide to detransition and to start speaking out about your experiences?
Well, first off, let's start with how I finally built up a courage. Well, I had complications with my surgery pretty much right away when I had it 7 years ago. And ever since then, I had multiple surgeries trying to fix the issue. And my goal with transition was what most transsexuals want, which is to present a stereotype of an opposite sex so we can just blend in and live our lives. My long-term plan was never to carry a trans label, I guess. That's the mindset I went into the surgery, because I was sold a sex reassignment surgery. I wanted to have the surgery and move on with my life, and just live as a woman, I guess, because I was delusional enough to believe that I could just have a surgery and live as a woman. But right off the bat,
that's what they told you, right? I mean,
that's what they told me, right? And I also was delusional enough to think that I'm gonna have the surgery and I can just leave, but I didn't realize that I wasn't passable, and people. Once you leave that pink bubble of tranny chasers and other trans people who are like, you're so beautiful, you're so feminine. And once you kind of have that surgery and you go out in the real world, some people can tell you're a man. And it's and that's when your bubble bursts, so it was almost would have been probably healthier for my mental health to stay in the pink bubble and just live my life as a trans woman, which right now, no matter what people say, when you think of a trans woman, you think of titties and a dick. You cannot convince me otherwise. That's what it is. we lost a lot of definition, but in my mind, that's what trans woman is. That's what we see in porn. That's what people assume right away. There's very few post-ops. In general, a lot of people do not get the surgery, which, by the way, I do not recommend at all. So I'm glad a lot of people are not getting it. But also a lot of people who don't get the surgeries, they're always the ones that are screaming the loudest how the surgeries are safe and should be available to anybody with minimal gatekeeping, which me and a few other detransitioners and unhappy transitioners can testify that these are completely irreversible drugs and surgeries. And we actually, now that I've peaked, I did some research, I realized there's literally no study showing that bottom surgery / sex reassignment surgery helps anybody's mental health. There's literally zero studies showing that. There's in fact studies showing the opposite, that I'm much more likely to cancel myself from this dimension. After the surgeries, there have been some studies done in Sweden, but it doesn't matter. I feel both sides throwing out the studies and they're all getting debunked by the other side. So it's at this point, we're having this huge wave of detransitioners. And a lot of them detransitioning not because they weren't accepted as trans, it's because they didn't get the happiness. They didn't get the gender euphoria that was enough to cancel out all the mental issues and damage done, in my case, to my body, you know. I don't go out there, oh my God, I get to wear like a two-piece. Like I'm not, like I don't see like Dylan Mulvaney experience, you know, like, oh my God, I'm so happy to be a woman. Like I'm not.
Oh, that one.
I just saw that. Speaking of Dylan, we can take a short.
Yeah,
I saw that he went to the White House and spoke to
I know
Biden on this subject. I just thought it was interesting that somehow in the universe, Dylan Mulvaney, trans woman, goes to speak to Joe Biden about these very important issues. Meanwhile, Shape talking to Joe Biden about these issues, Blair White talking to Joe Biden about these issues.
Is the Joe Biden administration going to hear the other side of the story?
No,
probably not. I doubt Shapeshifter's going to get an invite to the White House.
Honestly, Biden was one of my triggers because I was already boiling inside. Leah Thomas and Biden were my triggers as well to just finally come out. I talked about my complications on my YouTube channels like 4 years ago. I was never a trans influencer because I kind of missed out on all that. I gave up all that for my privacy and to live stealth, you know. I kind of, part of me like seeing how all those trans influencers took off in 2014 to 16, you know, they got like all this recognition, all those videos, you know, look at my ass, it's grown on HRT, you know, all those videos were taking off, you know, boy to girl, you know, those stereotypical cheesy like sub nails. I kind of missed out on all that because that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to live quietly, you know. But when Biden said like, oh, it's the best thing you can do to affirm your child's gender, and like we have to worry about our transgender seniors, I kind of lost it because I was like, are you fucking kidding me? What transgender seniors? I don't think I'm even gonna make it that far, like with all the experimental drugs in my system. Like I'm literally mentally struggling. If people think it's a joke to try cross-sex hormones, whether that would be estrogen or testosterone, and that like I'm detransitioning right now, I'm taking testosterone, but I'm also taking some estrogen because I can't go too crazy on my testosterone. I'm getting a phantom limb thing in the morning. I feel like I have a boner, and then it's not there. It just brings more attention to my genitals.
Do you know Richie? Do you know Richie on Twitter?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's my friend, and as a detrans man,
Yeah, we spoke with him as well, and he had that whole thread about this, and he's also going through a similar situation with the hormones now, you know, and not taking too much of one or the other because it's like he's not naturally producing the testosterone, so he has to take the testosterone. But I don't know, it's, you know, we just told him like do whatever is gonna create the least amount of suffering for you, you know.
Right, exactly, because we're already been experimented on and we're just in uncharted territory completely. And actually the doctors that are like trans doctors that help people transitions, they also don't know what the hell they're doing. They pretend like they know or they have the data long term. Children definitely are out of question because we really haven't experimented enough on children, I guess. And I'm sure somebody gonna say it takes this seriously. I'm being sarcastic, like to have the long-term data, like whether it's safe for kids to transition. Like we really don't know many cases where kids have been transitioned and they've been happy with the results 20, 30, 40 years down the line. And we just don't have that. We have case of Jazz Jennings. A lot of my viewers and viewers, I'm sure, have seen Jazz Jennings situation, and I don't think that person is thriving. Actually, I haven't used that word in a while, and with my accent, it doesn't come through. I don't think she's
thriving.
Yes, thriving.
Speaking of the accent, I wanted to ask, you know, where are you originally from? Where do you?
Well, I don't want to reveal that, but I'm from a small country that's kind of like Eastern Europe / Middle East. So I was like raised Muslim, but then I'm no longer Muslim. So I'm more spiritual. Yeah. So I definitely had a lot of homophobia, as I mentioned in Blair White interview growing up. I still internalize homophobia a little bit because
I think we all do. I think all gay men struggle with that for most of their lives, you know, gay, bisexual men in general. I think it's just something where it's a process, you know, of getting that shame away. And you know, how many trans people are actually just dealing with that? And this is the thing, you know, why it's so dangerous to be pushing young people into these practices, because they're not even having time to settle into their identities to figure out if they're just gay, you know.
They're putting like little boys on puberty blockers, which will permanently and irrevocably, you know, shrink their genitalia. You know, that's cruel to me. Like, you know, men in general are already insecure about the size of their penis,
Yeah.
unless they're really large. But in general, you know, like to do that to a small child and to take away his potential before he can even consent to that kind of thing. It really it doesn't sit right with me. I don't even think circumcision. I have a problem with circumcision.
Yeah, and
because I find it like a little like, why are you taking a scalpel to that baby's genitals before he can even talk? Like,
well, the radical activists too, when we talk about this stuff, they love to bring up circumcision and say, "Oh, well, are you fighting against circumcision in this way? And are you also against circumcision?" And we say, "Yeah, actually, we are. We have a problem with that as well." So.
I do have a friend who fights against like child circumcision in Canada. His name is James. I was actually on his channel. He has a small YouTube channel. He's like an older gay Canadian man, and I never thought of it because I was circumcised too, obviously. Like, and I wish actually I had more skin. Like, obviously I regret the whole surgery altogether, but maybe if I had that extra skin, maybe would have done something. I don't freaking know. But even from trans perspective, if surgeries were to be safe, it's honestly good to have extra skin. You just never know. Just from reconstructive purposes, you know, if you're ever in some kind of accident, you may need that extra skin. I know it's not that much probably, but it's your bio material. Like,
no, it's true. I actually, when I was in college, I hooked up with a guy who had a accident trying to climb over a barbed wire fence and actually damaged the tip of his penis. Ooh. And he had a permanent sort of scarification where, you know, the glands, which is like the head of the penis, was on one side, sort of like it was just flat into like scarred into the side of it. But yeah, had he had a little extra there, it might have been the injury may have been more protected. And that's why the good Lord gives us foreskin. Like, you know, there's a reason we're born with it, right?
Yeah, but you know, religion is another topic too.
Well, that's also the reason why a lot of people cut it off. You know, the Muslims cut it off because of the conflict with Muhammad, and the Jews. And the Christians in America do it across the board just because of Kellogg in the 19th century. He popularized it.
Yeah. But that just shows how important cultural narrative is. You know, it's like what we're almost like I all of a sudden realized are we part of counterculture that's like all of a sudden emerging?
We are the new counterculture.
Yes, crazy. And it also goes to show that the whole like gender ideology movement in many ways it's like a religion though. Like this is like to go through the surgeries and the hormones and all of that stuff, like it feels like a sacrament. It's like a sacrament to some of these people. It's like holy to them. I just find that very bizarre.
And speaking about that, I just had Casey Miller on my channel, and you guys know, like, the hate train is not stopping. So I'll be making like more reaction videos. Like all the TikTokers just like calling us grifters. And he was part of fundamental church, you know, growing up, and he tweeted something like the similarities I see between like transgender ideology and fundamental church is uncanny, and that's what he said. It's very like cult-like, and he doesn't even identify as the transitioner per se officially, like, and he's just still kind of gonna have to live, I guess, maybe as a trans person.
So I remember when Casey put her video out recently, or him I don't know
whatever pronoun.
And that was like a couple weeks ago, and it's crazy to see how quickly his followers went up. You know, I saw him go from like 2,000 to now he's at like almost 15,000. And look, it goes to show how many people are now actually paying attention to this now. The fact that his followers went up that quickly. And then there were all these, you know, trans radical activist types literally attacking him, making fun of her appearance, and like no sympathy at all, no empathy for what this person is going through. And I just find it like it's despicable, some of the behavior I've seen on Twitter. And
I know, but I think a lot of people who just attack, they really don't know. They don't have time to like deeply, and they don't want to see our stories. They don't want to see my interview with Blair White. They don't want to read Casey's Twitter because it could trigger detransition, you know. And in this case, it probably just means dropping trans label. But we're still figuring out what detransition even means. Like, if I stop testosterone, will I be a retransitioner? Like, I don't know. Like, so like, yeah. But one thing I want to also bring up, I just noticed being part of this community, how like this religious groups and right wings, you know, and I'm kind of more leaning right as well at this point, you know, they often treat detrans women differently than detrans men. To a lot of them, detrans men are just a bunch of perverts that deserved what happened to them, you know. And that's kind of reality, you know. Whenever a detrans woman comes out, she gets more, and they deserve all the support. I'm supportive of it. I'm just saying that's what I've noticed being a detrans man, you know. I do get a lot of love and support, but I don't get as much as detrans woman. But I feel like,
it's the same with gays and lesbians, you know. I feel
right?
like
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
and I'm not saying lesbians have never been stigmatized and don't go through homophobia and stuff like that, but I feel like there's always been more of a taboo around the gay man.
Of course, 100%. The same with bisexuality.
Yeah.
I mean, every straight guy's dream to have a bisexual wife or a girlfriend. It's like almost every straight woman's nightmare, or it shouldn't be, but that's how
it shouldn't be. I actually think bisexuals probably go through the most shit. I'm starting to realize, you know, because it's like, you know, you have gay men who are afraid to date them because it's like, oh, you're going to leave me for a woman. And then you have straight women who are afraid to date them because it's like, oh, you're going to leave me for a man. And that must be difficult. You know, I can't even imagine what that must be like.
Yeah, but and I know I have some radical homosexuals following me. They telling me things like, you know, there is no real bisexuality. This men are just gay men that are have trained themselves to sleep with women.
It's not true. It's not true.
No, actually, technically, I am bisexual. Every once in a while, on a blue moon, this is the way I describe it. I'm probably attracted to like 1 out of 1,000 women out there in the world, but I'm attracted to maybe like 1 out of like 10 guys. And so I have like a much higher propensity to be attracted to men, but it doesn't, you know, it does occur, and I have slept with women and I have enjoyed it, but it's incredibly rare. And for all intents and purposes, I identify as gay because I'm effectively gay. I don't date women. I don't seek, you know, women in any sort of romantic or sexual context. So effectively gay, but technically bi.
Right. Yeah. I do know like bisexual people as well. You know, my ex-husband, some people are gonna say he's gay, but like I started dating him when I was just like, you know, twin before transition, and he's been there for me for like all the surgeries, and even after we got divorced, we're still in good relationship, you know. So he's legitimately like bisexual, or I guess what people would call pansexual, but like he's bisexual, you know, but it doesn't matter what I sing or he sings. A lot of people are gonna say he's just gay, even though he was married before to a regular woman, you know, and all that. And just like I've met real bisexual people. And when I was gay, like initially, like I'm still gay, but like when when I discovered I was gay, I could also not understand bisexuality, you know, because I was like, I wish I was at all attracted to women, you know, but I was so like couldn't even picture myself having sex with someone at the time. Now I can, like I feel like I'm attracted to, like when I had my surgery, I started feeling attraction to women as well. That was like so weird. I was like, now really I don't have a penis and I feel attraction to women as well.
So interesting.
Fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, I was mad that I never got a chance to have you know, that experience before I lost my penis, you know. And also the whole top and bottom thing, you know, just like I said that multiple times, that like your sexuality is fluid. I feel like some of us do know right off the bat that we're gay, you know, but we're attracted to opposite or same sex, whatever. But some people, I guess, they do go through life. I don't know if they're like in the closet super or like it just comes over time, but I feel like it takes time to like experiment maybe or discover your sexuality. And that's why like
too, but you know, it's like especially for people who come out later in life and stuff, it's like it's not an easy thing, you know.
Yeah,
I honestly did not know you guys were gay or bi, whatever. So like, do you also think that like sexuality is fluid over time in terms of like bottom and top sing and verse sing, or is it like set in stone? It's fluid.
It depends. It depends on the person.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, there are definitely people who just they're going to be strict one way or the other, and maybe I don't know if it's because they tried the other and didn't like it. But I think that's kind of limiting. I don't think you should like put yourself in the box to say, "Oh,
Right?
I'm a bottom." You might know you prefer one over the other, but I think, you know, that's kind of boring, you know, to not experiment.
But also, like the thing about a lot of people that don't. So, as a gay man of 39, about to turn 40, I've had a lot of anal sex.
Oh my God,
from both directions in my life.
We're clipping that.
And well, I'm trying to say what, like, my point is that anal sex is a very nuanced form of sex, and it varies differently from vaginal sex. So vaginal sex, you don't need any lubricant. You don't need exogenous lubricant. Anal sex, you need lubricant.
Yeah.
Anal sex, also, the bottom wants to be as empty digestively as possible to minimize any discomfort or any what I will call slippage during the actual event. And so it's a complicated thing, and it's difficult.
There's still the disgust factor there for some people too, especially men who have like that internalized homophobia. Still, it's like I think we view it that way, but it's like, look, men do have a prostate. Why is a mystery, right? I mean, but we do have it.
Well, no, we know why the prostate exists. We don't know why pushing on the prostate from inside the rectum creates a physically pleasurable sensation. But
that's what I meant. Okay. That's what I meant. So it's like, clearly, there's something to that. And look, many gay and bisexual men who have anal sex will describe it as being, like equally as important in the sense of bonding with the other partner as, vaginal sex. I'm not saying it's the only way to have sex. And there are also plenty of gay men out there who don't have anal sex at all. Like, they're not into that at all. They, they do other things, and that's what they're into. So it's definitely not the only way to do it, but it is, I think it's a valid way to have sex with someone and to bond.
It varies. It varies so much depending on the top and the bottom, on the relative size of your parts connecting together.
Yeah.
Or, depending on your digestive health or your internal, like your situation down there, like a lot can be different.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, because that was one of the reasons that I had the bottom surgery, because I just got tired, having to prepare for intimate moment. My dream, I got so brainwashed that I was a woman, I thought like that was my dream, to like come home and spread my legs and have missionary sex with vagina and not have to prepare for it, or like having to carry lube or anything like that. And that was the whole point. Like, granted, I knew that even if I had neo vagina, I would have to use lubrication. But I thought at least like I wouldn't have to, prepare for it and all that. Because you guys know, no matter how much you prepare, things can get messy, and sometimes it takes away from the experience of being relaxed. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm so bored of having like this things over and over.
I think people are afraid to have these conversations because they're taboo things. We're talking about sensitive, private things, but I think you do have to kind of lay some of this stuff out on the table, especially when discussing the trans issues. And maybe some of like the illusions that you're talking that people go into transitioning thinking it's going to be one thing and it turns out to be another,
Right. And till today, I'm like, I still sometimes, I know like I'm not getting my penis back. So I'm like still hoping that maybe someday I'll be able to have missionary sex, with my front hole. So like that's how it ended up. Even after everything I sacrificed, I was not able to have like that type of sex.
This is the perfect conversation for dangerous rhetoric, though. Like, is dangerous taboo stuff. So we're having the correct conversation right now.
Right. And also I do have a lot of young gays that are watching my channel, and young trans-identified individuals that haven't hopefully had the surgery yet. So they need to hear this, I do have a lot of femboys that are like, have considered transitioning and desisted, or like now realizing it's not maybe an option. So they're listening to these conversations, trying to still make up their mind. Yeah. I just had a desister the other day who's still thinking about transitioning because he's still experiencing, I guess, what we call gender dysphoria. So he needs to hear all of this,
Gay boys can love to get fucked. There's nothing wrong with that. We have a whole class of wonderful bottoms, from bitchy bottoms to bossy bottoms to all kinds of bottoms. And they love getting fucked. They have no problem doing what they need to do to get it. And they love that they can still shoot a load out of their, man parts when they're in the act. So at least that's been my experience.
I think in gay scene, for sure, like when I was part of it, I mean, I'm still technically, I guess, part of it, but when I was, more presenting as a dude, as a twink, whatever, I felt like there just was unproportionally high amount of bottoms to tops.
And that's so what I keep hearing. I think there's something to that.
Right. And at the time, like again, talk about fluidity of your sexuality. I was more of a bottom, and it was the ultimate fantasy to get the most masculine like top. But
Yes.
those were very hard to come by. And a lot of them were in the closets. They would never like claim you as like
Yep.
not that like once I transitioned, they were claiming me as a partner, but it was definitely at least behind closed doors opportunities for more having the sex that I wanted went up, as I feminized myself. So I felt like tranny chasers are part of gay community, and those are the missing ones, missing tops.
This is another thing that I kind of wanted to get into too. Now we're on this subject. It's like, this idea of masculinity, and that
Right.
culturally, the top or the man penetrating has definitely always been viewed in a less negative taboo light than the man who's receiving. The man who's receiving is, looked at as being in the role of the woman and looked at as less of a man, and when you look at a lot of ancient cultures and how they deal with homosexuality, we find this sort of stigma. And I think it hasn't been until modern times that we've started to kind of get rid of that stigma, and like, you're still a man. Like, just because you prefer to be penetrated by another man doesn't mean you're any less of a man, And I think,
he's violating gender norms.
Yes.
Is what it is.
And so, but I think, you talk about the very masculine tops and stuff. And I think, maybe deep down, some of them feel like they can only be the penetrating partner, because if they're the other, then that somehow makes them less of a man. Which is not true, of course.
And that's internalized homophobia.
It is,
And as somebody who had internalized homophobia for years, and I still do, I do remember that, like when I was trans woman, when somebody asked me to top them, there was a point, like maybe a year before surgery, where I was like getting angry. I'm like, I'm a woman, I'm not going to use my penis. It was just like, I got so brainwashed by trans community, but also hormones affected me as well.
Right.
It made me confused and made me feel like, like I was a legitimate woman. And I was also internalizing homophobia. I wanted only guys who did not want to like interact with my penis. And looking back, it was a lot of it internalized homophobia, because I saw them as less of men if they wanted it up the ass, But a lot of 90% of people, and that's the dichotomy, is I want to go see a trans woman or actual dated trans woman that has a dick. They want to interact with the dick in some shape or form. So overall, the ratio of tops and bottoms was kind of the same. But the men were more masculine presenting. That was the difference, I guess. The ways they wanted to have sex proportionally was similar to gay scene, like straight up gay scene. There were more people who wanted it up the ass. I fantasized about it, but there were, I guess, more what you wouldn't know that they had those. There were, I guess, that's kind of homophobic to say as well, but they were more masculine presenting.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we understand typical masculine and feminine mannerisms. And I think like that's kind of like why I joke sometimes that I'm like, I can do a gender fluid Bentley, because I can turn on the gay and the femme whenever I want, and I can just like bring it out and just be a little sassy sometimes.
I don't know. I mean, I think, part of coming to terms with being gay is you do, or bisexual, or whatever, is you do have to embrace that bit of your feminine side. It doesn't mean you have to like not present as masculine. Right. It means that when that sensitive side of you, that side of you comes out, there's no shame in it. You accept it, you express it when it's appropriate, and there's just like, we do live in a culture still, I think, that where it's like stigmatized for men to express emotion, to show their feelings. And I do think there's a time and place. Like, let me be clear, I don't think it's always becoming of a man to emote,
wear his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. I do that, sometimes, and I'm trying to reel that in.
You're an artist.
I'm an artist. Like, it's like the the curse of the poet artist, that we're very like sensitive to everything.
It's okay, you're growing your thick skin.
But I think those boundaries are being knocked down, but it doesn't mean that the gender roles don't mean anything, or don't come from somewhere biologically,
or don't serve a purpose. And like, so I think conservatives do have a point when they're trying to get back to the family values and those sorts of things, but folks like us don't totally fit in with the conservatives, because we are gender nonconforming, right? And we do realize that those boxes, even though they fit most people, don't fit everyone, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is
the radical types, they're the ones imposing the stereotypes, and they don't even realize it. You know, they're saying like, oh, you know, we got to get rid of these boxes and all that stuff. But as soon as there's a gender non-conforming boy or a girl, you immediately try to put them in the other box now.
Right.
And that's what's happened with gender nonconformity. I feel like at this point, anybody who is gender nonconforming gonna get asked what their pronouns are, or people are just gonna assume that they're in some form of transition from one direction to another. Am I not correct? Like that's what people are gonna assume.
When they could just be a gay man or a lesbian who's more masculine.
This is why I have a problem with social transitioning of minors, which is like the one thing. This is like again, it's the Mott and Bailey argument, or it's the give you an inch and they take a mile. Like basically, if you push the activists, they're like, well, what if you know, we just let them change their name and change their style of dress, and you know, we just socially, but we don't medically do anything. And my problem with that is that's the first step. It's like, you know, that's the gateway drug to puberty blocking, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. So if you start with just gender, you know, transitioning them at a young age, that's where, you know, you lead into that pathway. And so that I have a problem with that. But, you know, if you want to do it and say, you know what, this is all you're going to get and you can't go no further until you're 18, you know, really it's up to the parent. But I think the big problem is we have a lot of the medical industry guiding these parents and telling these parents straight up lies. Like, if you don't do this, your child is going to self-delete. And, you know, there's no evidence to support those statements. These doctors are just like lying to people left, right, and center. And they're not giving them full informed consent to these surgical practices, as your case demonstrates. They did not tell you the rates of complications or exactly what it'll be like afterward, largely in part because they don't know, for one, because everybody's experience is unique. But for number two, they just don't want to see any potential for negative outcome. And they continue to just herd people through the process, even when it's clear there's a problem. And you made that very clear in your Blair White discussion.
Well, also these folks become cash cows for these industries afterward. It's like you're basically going to be.
Nobody wants to talk about that either.
You're going to be on a cocktail of medications for the rest of your life. And, you know, I'm seeing more and more, not just detransitioners talk about that, but I'm seeing more trans adults who settled into their transness and aren't detransitioning, also speaking out about this and saying, look, I did transition as an adult and all this. Here's why this is not for kids. And they pull up their giant bin of medication.
Yeah, that was a TikTok video we saw.
I saw a couple.
Yeah, we saw that too.
I saw a few of those like that, you know, and there are more and more trans identifying adults agreeing with us and speaking out. And this is the thing, like, it's so funny when we talk about this stuff and people accuse us of being transphobes and all that. Like, we had Sarah Higdon on the show. I would sit down and break bread with Sarah Higdon any day. I am not phobic at all to someone who is an adult and transitions. It's not the issue here. This is about protecting kids, you know, and
especially gay and lesbian kids who are gender non-conforming,
bisexual, all that stuff. And like these trans adults also who are rational, they're realizing, and by rational, I mean they know they're just appearing as the other sex, that they actually aren't that. They're rational. They also understand this is reflecting badly on them too, and it isn't going to help them. It's just going to create more backlash. The conservatives who don't like them already definitely aren't going to like them the more they see this stuff happening to kids, and it's just going to make them flee further and further and further into their conservatism, and it's not helping them, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
it was going so well. I'm like so happy with this discussion. It's like so different from all other interviews I had, you know.
Well, we're grateful.
We were striving for that. I was like, you know, I just want to have like a conversation about the issues with Shape and not so much like dwell on the past.
Well, we didn't want to dwell too much on the shit you went through, you know, because you've probably gone over that a million times before. And with that said, you know, I think I want to move out of that a bit. You know, we've had our friend Laura on here before. She's another detransitioner, but she's a woman. And, you know, one of the things we talked to her about is like not wanting to just get pigeonholed as like the detrans person. And that becomes who you are as a person and all that stuff. And although it's important, you're speaking out about this stuff, but like, who are you as an individual? Who are you as a human being? Like, what are shapeshifters' passions and interests and things that have nothing to do with any of this?
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up because I just had 2 detransitioners on my channel and I kind of froze up. I couldn't interview them because it was, first of all, it was like I could just sense their pain because they were transitioning kids, and I froze up. I just couldn't ask them any questions because I didn't want to, because I didn't want to trigger anything. And I started asking some questions to get to know them as a people, because when I just came out as detransitioner, I was invited to so many like interviews, and nobody asked me like, what do you like to do? Who are you as a person? It was just like, when did you start taking hormones? Like, why did you do this? It was
we immediately knew we didn't want it to just be that, like humanize these people, like you're a person. You have other things going on for you, other things that are interesting to you that have nothing to do with the stuff you've been through,
Right. Yeah. I grew up like liking math and physics. I was typical, I guess, what would be considered boyish. Like, I know it's a stereotype. Yet another stereotype. Girls can like science too. But I like to play chess. I like watching documentaries.
Same.
I'm a pothead. I'm not on any SSRI, so I try to like, medicate myself with weed and shrooms. I'm advocate, I guess, for psychedelics, because I feel like they saved my life. If it wasn't for them, I would definitely be on high dose of SSRIs. I still struggle with my mental health, so there is days when I want to be part of this fight, gender/sex wars and whatever like this community is gender critical. I know some of us don't identify as gender critical, but it's kind of a community. We're all fighting to like stop medicalization of kids. Like, we have that goal in common. So yeah, sometimes I have my good days when I want to do all that, be on Twitter, print screen stuff, post it. There's days when I don't want to get out of bed and I cry. I had one of the bad mental health days yesterday when I was just crying, because sometimes reality hits you that I was lied to, by my doctors about who I am, about where I belong in society, and it's just like, I realized no matter what I do, I'm not getting back my genitals, and that's really a traumatic thought to realize sometimes, and sometimes I do trust into activism to kind of take away my pain and not think about what happened. I feel like detransition, even though all I did is just literally tell people that I'm a man. So like, I don't have many friends, because I'm antisocial in general. I don't like having friends, because I just feel like you have to talk to them, you have to like do things with them. And growing up, I didn't have friends. So to me, it's my normal. Like, I have social anxiety. I'm an antisocial person. I'll talk to people online, but I don't like hanging out in person. Honestly,
well, if you're ever in New York City, we would love to hang out with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. But like, I think it took away a lot of my confidence, seeing sometimes trans women that still have their dicks, which most of them do, I just see how confident they are. And part of it is testosterone, because once you're castrated as a man, you get more anxiety, actually. I don't know how the hell this idiot thought that somebody who struggled with depression, anxiety, they cut off their testosterone, which is known to help treat anxiety and depression. That is so dumb. Like, how the fuck did they do that? I was already growing up, I was an emotional kid. When people would bully me in school, I would cry right away, and people like, oh, you're a girl, like, you're not a real man. And the treatment was that to make me more of a girl, make me more emotional, make me more attached to people. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That makes no sense.
Well, it goes to show how, I think at the root of a lot of the trans stuff is homophobia, is
100%. And I bought into it.
Facing that as a child and like being confused, and instead of like being reassured, like, hey, you are still a boy, even if you're more emotional, even if you like other boys, instead of growing up in an environment that kind of could reassure them. When you grow up in an environment that just represses that and hides that, it's why I think we see all the promiscuity and the drug addiction and all of this stuff. And it creates that vicious cycle, because then we get stigmatized for that behavior, which creates more homophobia. And then it's just a vicious cycle. We don't have a normal upbringing. We don't get to court people in the same way when we come of age.
Yeah, puberty for homosexuals is vastly different
and
than it's like for straight people.
And you mostly go through it alone. I forgot who we were having this discussion with, but they were talking about, like, for example, if you're Black, it's obvious. People can see it. And you're going to have mentors and people that you can identify who are also that way, that you can turn to and be like, well, hey, I'm going through these very particular issues, and they can guide you through that. When you're gay, you go through all of that inside, alone, hidden, and you don't know who to turn to for the most part. Things are a little different now, and obviously it depends on where in the country you are. how accepting or not accepting they're going to be, but it's still very much a problem. Like,
or where in the world, places that'll still kill you for being gay.
Sure, so like homophobia is still real and it's still a problem, and doesn't mean like we excuse any bad behavior coming from the LGBT community. It doesn't mean we excuse, the drug issues and the promiscuity and those things. I think we do got to keep ourselves in check. But the more we don't address the actual homophobia that is still around, I think the more we're going to see kids getting pushed into the trans stuff. Because
right. Honestly, once I had the surgery and I went out dating, when people say, "Oh, I don't want to sleep with like a trans woman," they're not like thinking of subcategories of a woman. They still see you as a man. That's their reality. When they say like they're not being transphobic, it's just what it is, I guess. I don't want to even call it homophobia. It's just like a sexual preference, I guess. But it's like when they don't want to be around trans women, they don't want to be around effeminate gay men, really. And I know there is like some straight men that transition, but like that's a whole another subject where just
like autogynephilia and things like that. And that's another thing too that's not discussed enough, that those people are there too. There are the ones who maybe aren't really experiencing what we would call like gender dysphoria, but are more experiencing a form of like a fetishization. Like they get turned on by the idea of appearing as the other sex. And we find this particularly amongst men, for sure, who are becoming women. But it's the same thing like we see it among women too, who say, grow up watching like anime and like yaoi and things like that, and like they start to fetishize being a gay man. And this is another thing like we talked to our friend Laura about, because she went through this. She, when she was younger, she found like she was having more emotional attachments to gay men and was more attracted to them than to straight men, but they didn't want to be with her. And so part of her transition and identity crisis was she wanted to become a gay man to sleep with gay men. And then found that they didn't want to sleep with her still because they're gay men, they're homosexuals. So,
oh my God, this is so crazy. Yeah, sometimes it's just fascinating to me because I did everything to ID myself out of homosexuality and not have to carry that label till the rest of my life, and knowing that somebody wanted to ID themselves into it. Like,
it's crazy, right? Because like we went through like a whole process growing up of trying to come to terms with being that, which was hard for us. So it is really weird to see people like actually wanting to like become
opt into it.
Like opt into it. It's like, wait, are you sure?
Regardless, I just feel like I wish I had more time to grow into my manhood. I know people like, I have a lot of trans women watching my channel, like hate watching, and some of them are just curious. They're gonna be triggered by that. But like, I wish I had more time to grow into my manhood. And I know people like save the kids, and I want to save the kids, but there's also a lot of homophobic people who will say a bunch of homophobic shit and then be like, we're doing all this to save the kids, and you can just, as somebody who grew up gay, we can tell when it's homophobia and when it's people who are concerned for kids. Like, and I think it became like what pisses me off sometimes. I want to quit activism because we're in such small minority right now, we're a country culture, we almost have to align with people who we know are homophobic. Like, come on, Matt Walsh is homophobic. Like, I can just sense that, like, with those little nuggets. And I know a lot of
very, very Catholic, conservative, traditional family.
Non-conformity.
Yeah.
If it was up to him, he would wave a wand and he would have all men wear suits and all the women wear like dresses that hits the floor, But that's not where it's going. Like, that's not where society is going. And I feel like, and I appreciate him doing what is a woman, like documentary and all that. Like, I do appreciate certain things he's done, exposing Vanderbilt, but it doesn't take away the fact that we don't align on all of the things,
Which is, I'm starting to realize is fine. I think as long as we are able to hold our position and call Matt out on his things, we can still address the things about him that we agree with and that we find are helpful. But yeah, you're right. It is kind of weird that we do have to align with some people who probably aren't ever going to like us for who we are. But I think the kids are the priority right now. And, I am willing to some capacity to ally with Matt Walsh if it means at least protecting kids from being harmed from this stuff, But Yeah, it is weird. It's a good
Yeah,
way.
I saw yesterday Andrew Tate video where he was like, "Oh, I understand that some of you gays like just don't want to sleep with a woman, but don't push your like something like that. Don't come for our kids." I'm like, what? I mean, I understand. Yes, nobody should be coming for kids, period, in any shape or form. But like, I could just sense this person thinks that we just opted out of having sex with women, because apparently gay lifestyle was more fun or something.
Yeah, or they lump us all together with the actual predators who are in the LGBT community. They are there, and we know they're there. And this is why Brent and I kind of started the show. It was one of the reasons we did, is we saw that they were there, and we felt, a lot of people in the quote unquote LGBT community don't want to address the predators in it because they think it furthers that stigma that we spent so long trying to get rid of.
So they don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it. We have the opposite view. We feel that by not discussing it, by not addressing them,
it makes it more likely.
By not separating yourself from that and saying, well, that does not represent all of us, you are furthering that stigma again, and it is more likely that the Andrew Tates and the Matt Walshes and stuff are just going to lump us all together because they're going to assume your silence is compliance. They're going to assume that by you not saying anything about it, you just think it's not happening or you're okay with it.
Right. And same, that's why I came forward as well, because I stayed silent for years. I mean, I didn't when I posted that video, but honestly, nobody cares. The trans community like gaslit me and just told me like, oh, you're just 1% of these complications. And
of course.
So for years, I thought that was the case. I was still defending ideology.
It's so funny. It's funny when the trans activists like to talk down to detrans activists because they claim that detrans people are a small percentage of the total number of trans people. When it's just like they have no self-awareness. It's like, honey, trans people are a small percentage of the total number of people. And, that's why we give you guys special protections and considerations. So if anything, you should be giving special protections and considerations to the detrans minority within your group for the same reason that you claim to be a protected minority in the larger culture. Like
I know. Honestly, this breaks my heart because the transitioners, like I was just talking to the trans kid, she doesn't even know like where to seek help, to get consultation for her breast reconstruction because she had her breast removed, and like people don't know how to get their endo system together. We're just left to our own devices to share information between us, which is also not super safe.
It's all uncharted territory, like you said.
But how do we trust doctors when they already let us down on their way in,
It's just crazy because like you go through this process, and then as soon as something goes wrong or you change your mind because of complications,
they gaslight and victim blame,
and they throw you out. They don't want anything to do with you anymore, and they have no interest in helping.
Which is so cluster B. It is so like typical of how the narcissist treats his victims. You are a useful object to them as long as you are in the good graces and you are you're making them look good.
Yeah.
But as soon as you don't do that anymore, as soon as you're not affirming their meaning, you as the patient, they look to you to affirm their, use and utility as a gender transitioning surgeon. And as soon as you stop doing that and say, I have a problem, this isn't working out for me, they just dismiss you and discard you like yesterday's news.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with KC. Yeah, all he said is just like, I kept on taking testosterone because I thought eventually I will reach that gender euphoria everybody claims to have. That's all he said. And he didn't say he was detransitioning officially or anything like that. And people just like took that one video and ran with it and just completely trashed him. He never said he felt ugly or anything like that. He just stated facts, like this is what happened.
That's what they do, though. They lie and they attack, and this is kind of what we're experiencing with the DR channels because we've, recently been in this space a lot more. I went up to Burlington, Vermont, and we did a collaboration with the Disaffected podcast where we sort of live streamed and taped a protest by Fred Sargent, who we had also had on the show. Fred Sargent was one of the original Stonewall rioters.
I know him, the one that got pushed on the floor, right?
Yes.
So we chatted on the show.
We had him, and so after he got pushed on the floor and assaulted, we went back to Burlington, and a lot of this group, Outright Vermont, that was responsible primarily for the assault on Mr. Sargent. They had a fundraiser And the fundraiser was a fire truck pull. Basically, you get teams together to pull a fire truck down the street and you raise money. The money goes to the organization Outright Vermont, which was using it to further the social and gender transitioning of minors. So we went with a bunch of people. We had a small group of maybe 10 people, and we did a little protest there.
Mostly gay men, by the way.
Mostly gay men.
Although they had this illusion in their head that
we were like white, Christian, conservative, straight people.
Because I think some of them can't even acknowledge that there are gay people out there who completely disagree with this approach, Even in media too, when they talk about Josh or anybody, they say that we identify as gay. Yeah, what the hell is that?
That is basically saying that we're pretending.
Yeah, that we're pretending, or that we
honey,
chose this. That's literal homophobia. That's real homophobia.
Classic homophobia. So we've had these troons, these local activists from the Burlington community found my Twitter page and started reporting stuff. And so I got my Twitter account locked. And now we have an old episode 62 with Dr. Mark Changizi was recently pulled. And we have our second strike on YouTube now for medical misinformation.
Yes.
Because I guess I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and actually watch the episode.
But that's crazy that they're still cracking down on people talking about the jabs and all of that stuff.
At the behest of the federal government, a clear violation of 1A.
Yeah, actual fascism right there. I mean, we're not going to delve deeply into that here in this episode, but we do recommend people to go on our website and watch that conversation, that second one, especially with Dr. Mark Changizi, because clearly there are things we spoke about in there that the powers that be don't want you to hear.
You might like that too, shit, because Dr. Mark is hot.
He is hot. He's a hottie. Shout out to Mark.
Yeah. I don't know if I can say that on camera, but I did talk to somebody recently I never actually met somebody who's he told me that he's still having side effects from the vaccine.
Yep.
And he also stopped after I think second one, he stopped because he still has tingly fingers or something. Something is happening with him that wasn't there before after the vaccine. And I don't think he's making it up. Just putting it out there as anecdotal examples. Somebody I know in real life who told me this.
Honestly, I feel like it's in a lot of ways it's very similar to the detransitioner experience. People that are having side effects and complications are being maligned by the medical industry. They're being ignored. They're being censored. They're being dismissed. We had a lot. There was a lot of brouhaha months and months ago. Senator Ron Johnson, I believe his name is, from Wisconsin. I want to say he's a Republican. He had some hearings where he invited people who had side effects after their injections. And he invited them to Capitol Hill to speak and to, give their experience. And YouTube censored the conversation. They pulled it off the internet because it was a violation of the COVID-19.
Yeah, one of them was this marathon biker. I can't remember his name. Actually, I would love to get him on the show and talk to him.
God, his story is so sad.
But he got so much backlash for that, that
he was one of the first people to really get some public attention for having a negative consequence.
And he made this heartbreaking video on Instagram where he talked about I'm really struggling with my mental health right now. I didn't expect people would be so vicious and mean for me just telling
his story,
what happened to me.
Wow.
And I need to just take a break from all this and step away. I mean, the guy was crying.
It's very similar to the detransitioner experience.
I almost quit too.
The transitioners who speak out against the gender ideology.
I quit already. Once I was I'm leaving because I got put on blast by this other creator on YouTube, Maya Henry, and I was I had all her little minions come for me, telling me that I was just a gay man wearing woman face, and I'm just a drag queen, and
people don't know
this and not come for a real trans woman. I'm what is real trans woman? Can we have please strict definitions and then use those definitions to sift out all the super feminine gender non-conforming gay men that are not real trans? So can't give answers.
But a logical fallacy. That's a logical fallacy called no true Scotsman too.
Yeah,
saying you're not a real trans woman. No, that's just another cheap ad hominem personal attack, so that they don't have to engage you on the ideas in good faith. That they can just slur you and dismiss you.
Yeah,
So there's so
honestly,
much hate that like I almost quit. I cried on camera. I was like, I'm quitting. I can't do this anymore. And my partner wants me to quit because he's just worried for my mental health. It's a lot. There would be like 80 positive comments. You guys know how it is to be on
Yeah.
social media, and you'll get that one comment that will like, and I have OCD, it will like get stuck in my head.
You'll fixate
It's
on
like
it.
the
Yeah.
worst. People will say, especially somebody who has body dysmorphia, people say like, oh, your
Yes.
teeth are crooked. Even though they may not be crooked, like I keep on writing, oh my God, do I need Invisalign? Do I need to make
I mean,
I just see people telling me like, oh, go get Invisalign and straighten your teeth, and it's like they send me like attachments of Invisalign pictures and stuff.
you just
have to ignore it.
You have to. It's hard though, and for some people it might be.
And
if you
need to take breaks,
take breaks.
Take breaks.
Yeah.
I took like a weekend break, but then I saw what was happening with Casey Miller, and I had to jump right back in.
That's the other thing. It's like I think
there's always an emergency.
As people with a conscience and as people who are really seeing what's going on and are actually deeply concerned, it's hard for us to take breaks because I think we almost feel obligated to speak out about this stuff, especially when you see how many people are afraid to. And I think, we know that the more of us who do speak out, it does give others courage.
That's why they try to censor us.
That's why they try to censor us, because they know. And I think ultimately, the more they try to censor, the more they try to silence our voices, we got to get louder. We got to get tougher, and we got to stand firm in who we are, and just, you know what? Like, no, I know who I am. I know why I'm doing this. I'm not going to let you shut me up. But take breaks, Yeah,
we know for a fact that social media is not good for mental health, and it's especially not good for people who have anxiety or obsessive compulsive leaning disorders or tendencies. So you gotta monitor yourself. You gotta be real careful with it. I'm lucky. I have really, really low neurotic tendencies.
I'm the opposite.
He's the opposite. So he needs to take more breaks than I do.
Yeah, I've had a couple meltdowns on Twitter already, and I'm just like, all right, deactivate. And just
I'm like, Daniel, turn it off.
I'm like, let me step away for a second, because it can be very overwhelming, very overwhelming.
And people also, like normal people out there, people every day, anonymous people, they have no idea what it's like to be subject to a Twitter pylon or any sort of coordinated social media attack from multiple people.
Yeah.
As soon as you get flagged in somebody's group chat for being a wrong thinker, the horde fucking descends upon you, and it's like, your account's being reported, you're getting all these negative comments. You're like, what did I do?
They start putting you on a list, and then they put you on blast in their group chats and all this stuff. Yeah. And then
they all take their turn, and they all have 5 accounts. It's not just, and then that's the other thing, is that these people are real crazy. They've got multiple accounts so that they can make it, 3 people can make it look like you're under an attack from a dozen or more.
Yep.
And it's not, it's not real. It's not real. It's a hall of mirrors amplified by social media.
That's what happened to me in 2020 when I started speaking out against the lockdowns and the mandates and stuff. Like, I had a couple former students, because I used to be a substitute teacher for like 5 years, and I know they were former students because they knew who they knew my name. They called me Mr. Delafay, all this stuff like that. I know, and they made it seem like there was a lot of them, but it was just like these burner accounts. So I could tell it was probably only like 2-3 people, maybe 4, but it made it seem like there was like a whole horde of these people. And they just kept coming into my DMs and messages like, you're killing people, you're putting them at risk, you're racist, why are you saying all this stuff, this and this and that? Like, I used to like you, I thought you were the coolest teacher, blah, 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 blah. Anything to try to like just rip me down and make me feel like I was a horrible person, and I would respond to some of them and just put them on blast in my stories and stuff, and they're like, why are you arguing with a bunch of kids? That's not mature of you. I'm like, well, first of all, I don't know who any of you are. As far as I'm concerned, you're just anonymous people on the internet, and if you're going to talk to me like adults and try to act like adults, I'm going to respond to you like an adult, and I'm going to put your ass in blast. So eventually they did stop. I started just blocking them, but that concept of like the burner accounts, having multiple accounts, like, they can very much make it seem like there's more of them than there really are, when really it's probably just a small minority. And I think Twitter in general and social media is creating this illusion that these radical types are en masse, that they are the dominant group in our culture right now.
And then
it's not true.
When we also consider that I call it corporate, like the establishment, the World Economic Forum types, the Bill Clinton and George Soros types, corporate, they want those ideas advanced. Yeah. So they slant the system in favor of it. Mm-hmm. And they make it really easy for them to propagate, their nonsense, their ideas, and their actual hate in a lot of cases, because they do, gang stalking, cyber stalking, and cyberbullying. And they, downregulate normal people who are trying to speak the truth.
Yeah, and which leads me to believe, honestly, I do think most people, one, are politically moderate, and we talked about this with Adam on our last episode, but also I think most people do agree with our positions, or would agree with our positions if they actually truly knew or understood,
hear a good faith elaboration of the
idea, or knew or even understood what was going on, because right. I'm convinced that a lot of people still don't even actually know, even the lefties,
we get a lot of people who refuse to believe anyone under the age of 18 is being transitioned medically,
when Jazz Jennings was literally on TV. It's like, to them, it's just not happening. So I feel like, if we really got down to it and talked to people maybe on a private, personal level, you would find, I'm pretty sure most of them do agree with our positions. But the ones who know and see, they're scared of that cancel mob. They're scared of their job being contacted. They're scared of losing friends and family, which, frankly, those aren't real friends if they're going to cut you off for talking about this stuff. It's a whole nother.
I lost friends over this because even just coming out as a man, even though I look the same, that's what I was saying. I don't have many friends, but some of my exes are my friends, and they kind of stop talking to me because they just they want me to carry that label, of being a woman, and it's they think I'm crazy for just saying that I'm a man online, It's crazy. And my family kind of distance themselves from me as well because they just can't understand. They obviously see that they support me through transition, but now I'm saying I'm a man. They're well, you look like a woman, so just keep on living as a woman. They almost want me to keep on living as a woman,
That's interesting how they could have, the understanding while you were going through the process, but now they can't have that same sort of understanding when you admit that it was a mistake for you. It's a
mistake, but just like Casey Miller, I just have to think rationally. I don't think I can ever go back because I just don't have. I'll look like F2M, you know what I mean? I'm gonna when naked, I'm gonna look like F2M.
You had a tweet the other day, something I forgot what you said. It was something like, all I can really do now is make what I can out of the body I still have.
Yeah, it's literally I'm feeling I have to make something out of my life, and it feels like I'm making something out of leftovers. Both my original blueprint and my body. I just feel testosterone was giving me more male experience. And again, these are just stereotypes, but I felt testosterone made me lust for guys more. So it wanted me to go out and be more of a hunter, make something happen. With estrogen, I wanted to nest more. I wanted a guy to protect me and provide for me. And I feel that was rude awakenings that a lot of guys nowadays don't want to be providers. They just want to F you and move on, and that's a reality. And so and now I have both hormones in my system, so I'm all kinds of confused. I'm engaged, about to get married, but I'm questioning if it's just estrogen that's making me want to nest.
It's also why I gay relationships and just relationships between men, testosterone pairings can be rather complicated, because sometimes one might want to be more nurturing, but that might change from week to week, and there's very much a balance you kind of have to find between nurturing but also being the breadwinner, but then being nurtured again, and allowing yourself to do that without feeling less of a man, but also you are still a man, and there's that testosterone in you that does want to protect her and
hunt
and and things. And
we just watched The Northman the other day.
Good.
I know. I watched it the other day.
Oh my god, it's so I just wanted to go out. I was telling Daniel before we got on that we should just get some broadswords and go up to the roof and just slam metal into each other and just record that, because that'd be some fun content. It'd also be great exercise.
Yeah, and honestly, that girl was from Queen's Gambit. I didn't even clock that till the movie. She looks very familiar.
I was just thinking that too. I was trying to figure out where I had seen her before, and that's what she was in.
Right, I know. I didn't clock that till almost the end. I was wow, I enjoyed that show too, and I really like that show. I usually don't watch movies that much, but that was really good.
Well, you said you're into chess. You like chess.
Right. Yeah, I did watch Queen's Gambit and Huntsman. I like accidentally watched it. Whatever. As Norseman, not Huntsman. Sorry. Yeah, it was really good as well. I wish it didn't die at the end, but of course, like they had to make it dramatic and stuff.
Yeah, it was tragic. It's a tragedy, but it's also
It's a cool-
it has that. It's actually a bittersweet ending.
It's
because-
basically Viking Hamlet.
Yeah, it's Viking Hamlet.
Yeah. Same story.
But also,
structure.
I love the portrayal of masculinity in its like all its like forms.
It's most primal,
You
but
really
also
see-
like it's most like noble.
Well, yeah, you see like the darkest sides of it with betrayal and like theft of the
Brutality,
wife and murder
Slavery
and slavery, and then you see like the opposite with like this self-sacrifice in order to protect
protect
the next generation and the bearer of that. So he sacrifices himself in the end to make sure that his wife and his line continues, which is a very like you could say it's the essence of masculinity in a way. Men forever, men have been the providers and protectors, and we were, our lives, once we've planted the seed, we are, evolutionarily disposable. We can, so if we can sacrifice ourselves in order to assure the protection of the next generation, then you could say in a way that we have succeeded as men.
Yeah,
at least archetypically.
I just love that like half the film is just big burly men
screaming
like animals.
Yeah, it reminded me of, I used to watch Spartacus.
Yeah.
It was so hard. Like not that many people watched that show, but it was like so underrated. It was actually really good.
Tragic too. The actor, I think from the first season, ended up passing.
Yeah, he passed away. But honestly, like it was kind of in a way low budget because like the ways they did Forest and Blood, it was like so fake. But it didn't take away from the show because like the actors are good and they kind of like carry the acting. Acting skills.
The acting was great.
It goes to show though that like you can have something that's visually stunning and have all this amazing special effects like Rings of Power, for example, but then if the writing sucks, if the characters are flat, like none of that matters. And then the flip side of it, you could have crappy special effects and all that stuff, but if the writing is solid and the characters are believable, people are gonna like it more and be
I was living for it. I remember like people saying you send nothing but Roman and they're like put some knives through.
I was curious. So I just recently got Disney Plus because I changed my Verizon plan. So now I have free Hulu and free Disney Plus. And so we watched the new Hocus Pocus, or tried to watch the new Hocus Pocus.
I walked out of the room and saw some of it.
It was so bad. Oh my God. The writing was terrible. Like, it's just, I can't even from the girl boss stuff to like almost apologizing for the witches being, these like murderous child eaters.
Yeah, like what is that? They're supposed to be the villains.
Everything about it was wrong. I mean, as far as I will just forever only acknowledge the first one. But it was almost as bad as The Craft. Did you see The Craft?
No, I watched The Ring of Power recently, and it was kind of good at times, but it was also cheesy at times. Like I feel like they could have done better. Initially, I thought they were trying to go for younger crowd, but then they had some violent scenes where people's arms were breaking off. I'm like, which show am I watching? Like,
yeah.
I feel like they should have edited like graphic violence out and make it more for teenagers that adults can still enjoy. But that kind of confused me. On one hand, like they're trying to be this magical and cute, and then you have violence. I don't know. I was a little confused. I didn't know like which way to take it. It had some good moments, but it was like not 100%. It didn't 100% get me there. Like I don't know. When fireflies died and they all cried like over a dead firefly, I'm like, what is this? Like literally, she like cried instantly from like one dead firefly.
Like honey, it's an insect. Relax.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do Rings of Power. I think I'm gonna just keep avoiding it. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to see Galadriel in armor swinging a sword. I don't.
She's a sorceress,
and I'm not saying it's because like women can't be that type of character. We had Eowyn in the original Lord of the Rings. Takes the helmet off. I am no man. Kills the Witch King. So it's like we had that character ready. The point of Galadriel was she was more the powerful divine feminine in its most pure feminine form. Like she used magic
could get into your head.
Her charm,
she could speak. She was seductive.
Her beauty, her charm, her magic. That was where her power was. She didn't have to swing a sword or wear armor to be powerful, and she was already feared and viewed as a very powerful, scary character in her femininity.
It's almost like they transitioned her in a way.
Yeah, it's like, but
right? Have you noticed? I was noticing that too. I feel like younger people are gonna watch that and also gonna want to cross dress, I guess, wears the armor and stuff. Like that's
they tried to make her like a Joan of Arc type or whatever. That was Eowyn. We already had that in the original Lord of the Rings. So I don't understand why we had to take a character like Galadriel, who was already perfectly fine and powerful in their own way, with magic, femininity, all that stuff, and try to make them a caricature of a man. It's just, it's so backwards, you know, for these people who talk about like the, you know, putting everything in boxes and stuff. Like they conform to the most stereotypical, like,
you know, like this is the thing about equality or equality between the sexes that people don't like to talk about, is that, you know, if we're going to be equal, then we have to equally value the positives and negatives of both sexes. Yes. And women are the weaker sex, yes, but they are also, they mature faster. They are seductive. Their power is in their speech, you know, and historically we totally forget, and evolutionarily we forget, that women choose the men who will be the fathers of the next generation. Yeah. And so, you know, there's this weird concept of just like totally unappreciative of the seductive and the mystique of the feminine woman.
Well, you said weaker, and this is the thing, like physically
weaker.
But there are different kinds.
When you said that, I'm like, I'm gonna get canceled.
There's different kinds of strength. You know, there's physical strength is only one sort of strength. You know, there's emotional strength. There's all types of strength.
I want to attest to that, because once I lost my testosterone, I feel so weak and brain fog, like I can't lift things. I mean, and I know I never became a real woman, but testosterone what gives strength to a lot of men, you know, and that fearlessness, you know, in a lot of cases. I'm not saying, again, we're generalizing, we're talking like in general, but yeah, you're right. I do feel weaker, and I do feel like unprotected kind of, and my body knows that I've been altered, like no matter how much testosterone I take. And that's like, I have this unique experience to share that a lot of people don't talk about. I know now is that like
there's almost something, you know, and I'm not trying to like, you know, fetishize your trauma or whatever, but there is almost something beautiful about the fact that you do kind of have that experience. You know, you do, you know, a bit what it's like to be a woman. Obviously, you're never going to know what it's like to be a woman because you're not, but you have a unique perspective. And I think, you know, trans, detrans in general, people who've gone through that do have a unique perspective and something we can learn from, you know?
And I think trans community, I guess we should wrap this up shortly, but like, I think in general, like, when going into transition, I just didn't realize, like, I also saw that estrogen was for titties and ass, you know? And I hated testosterone. I got so brainwashed. I'm like, oh, that's a stupid chemical that made me go through male puberty, you know, and develop like secondary male characteristics that make me pass less, you know? But I didn't understand that testosterone had all those benefits, you know, and estrogen was more than just titties and ass, you know? And it's like, I think that's what kids need to understand. But I think sometimes, can you even understand that and comprehend that if you haven't lived a few years, you know, as an adult, you know, and got to your late 20s or 30s? I don't think so, because sometimes you just really need time to figure out how this reality works, you know?
I think ultimately, you know, just back to the point Brent was making, I guess we can end on this point, you know, there are strengths that women have that men typically don't, and there are strengths that men have that women typically don't, you know? And like you said, both sexes have their toxic traits and issues that they have to contend with. There's toxic femininity just as there is toxic masculinity, but there's also divine masculinity and divine femininity. And, you know, both have their strengths, both have their weaknesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. We can address that, you know, we can complement each other. That's the whole point. That's how we've managed to survive historically, is by acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of each other and then trying to complement one another.
But when you have a bunch of crazies with cluster B personality disorders trying to hijack the conversation, it creates a problem.
Right. And also, like, I guess I wanted to ask you one question because I don't have many opportunities to talk to gay men who had like similar experiences to mine growing up. And this may be a loaded question, but a lot of people tell me that I'm gay because of childhood trauma, but I feel like I was gay before childhood trauma. What is your stance on it? Because you probably know a lot of gay people. Like, I kind of transitioned on my own, and once I transitioned, I never like associated with gay scene or even trans scene. I've been to gay club once in my life. Because I was so homophobic, once I started transitioning, I kind of cut myself out from like gay community. So what do you have to tell to those people? Because I have those arguments with those people all day long.
I mean, I'll go first just because my experience is definitely different than Brent's. I was never very immersed in the gay community. Most of my friends growing up were straight. It wasn't until later in life, actually until meeting Brent, that I had more gay friends. And actually, I have more gay friends now since being gender critical and speaking out about this stuff than I did before, which is ironic. But, I never quite felt I fit into that scene either. And I still don't feel like I fit into it. But also, I've embraced myself as a gay man, and it's been a long journey there. Where it comes from, I think that question is still up in the air. I think, like most things, it's a mixture of nature and nurture. I'm not going to say upbringing doesn't have anything to do with it. There are certain patterns you find among gay men, either an absent father or a weak father, overbearing mothers. There are definitely patterns there. And that's not to say that there aren't exceptions to that there aren't, gay people who felt like they didn't have an absent father and those sorts of things. But there's definitely a prevalence of it amongst us. Lots of daddy issues amongst gay men. So does that mean that we were created that way because of trauma or whatever? I don't know. I think that question is still up in the air. I think a lot of gay men are afraid to admit that we still don't quite know, because the stigma, of being told that you're broken, and the pushback against that has been like, well, no, I am born this way and I am this way and it's natural and it's normal. And I do think it's normal. It's existed as long as history has existed. You can find examples of homosexuality going way, way back. But I'm not going to, pretend that the nurture has nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think there's definitely a trauma component for a lot of people. Just when you talk to the people in the gay community, when you talk to gay men about their childhood, there's a lot of trauma. And if not overt trauma, then at least absentee fatherism or really sort of cluster B style motherism. And this is something that Josh Socklem talks about on his show, on the Disaffected podcast. But I think there is a component there. I also think there's a nature component. Something happens. Homosexuality is far more common in densely populated cultures. So I think there's some sort of evolutionary cue that happens when we start living close together as people.
I grew up in the city,
So I think there's some weird combination there. I'm not too sure.
It could be, nature's way of trying to like regulate the population, or just make sure it doesn't like spread too fast. And obviously, like, the Christian way, conservative view of this is that it's totally unnatural. It goes against nature. We're all supposed to procreate. We're all supposed to carry on our genes. And, I don't think humans are that simple. I think we're here to serve different roles. And I think, gay men serve a particular purpose in society that's different than that. We give birth to other sorts of things. Many of us are very creative. Many of us are very artistic. And a lot of the beautiful things that everyone in this world enjoys and benefits from came from gay and lesbian and bisexual people who did not fit totally into that norm. Like,
shout out to poor Alan Turing.
Alan Turing. I mean, like, he created the precursor.
They castrated him. They tried to transition him.
Precursor to the modern computer. The reason we're even having this conversation right now, and that people can angry tweet all their homophobic shit, is from a gay person. So it's like I said this to someone on Twitter the other day, because I posted something about, homosexual love, and that it can be as deep as heterosexual love. I wasn't saying all of it is. I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of promiscuous, like, throwaway sex amongst gay people. I'm saying it can be as deep, and it can produce beautiful things that have nothing to do with progeny. And someone responded to me like, oh, well, take all the homosexuals and, like, let them start their own country and let's see how many beautiful things they produce. And I'm just like, dude, you clearly just hate us. You're homophobic. Like, I never said we're the only ones who produce beautiful things. You know, it's just you're clearly homophobic, and the only reason you can even type that tweet right now is because of a gay man.
We're the spice. We're
So-
spice
Right.
cultural recipe.
Going back to that and hormones, I just feel like now that I've been through what I've been through, I feel like if I had my original levels of testosterone, I would have been kind of like Jeff. No, I'm not narcissist enough to say I would be as famous or as like successful as them, but I feel like losing my testosterone was a push behind my creativity.
Yeah.
And now it's like there is not that push. Creativity is still there, but it's like I almost expect somebody else to make things happen. I don't know, it's so weird. Like but I realized at some point I was that person who wanted to, and who had the drive and the power of testosterone to make things happen. You know, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
You might just have to push yourself a little harder mentally, but I'm sure that creativity is still very much in there, you know, and if you look deep enough, you're going to find it for sure.
Right. And I also wanted to say that in terms of like divine masculine, divine feminine, that really resonates with me. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, after all psychedelics I did, like, I may not be a woman, but I'm definitely divine feminine. So divine feminine and masculine presents itself in different biological sexes.
Yeah.
And again, it's another ideology, but to me that would explain the gayness and a lot of other variations. And I think when you find true love, sometimes it does transcend like biological sex. And I guess I want to leave that because I feel like that's a beautiful message to leave for people.
Totally.
And I think moving forward, I want people to stop like focusing so much on labels as gay, straight, bisexual, and just like take people as is, you know.
Humans. So we're having human experiences together.
Right. Girl dick is still not a thing, but you know.
Wait, do you want to let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube as Shapeshifter. There's just like space between shape and shifter, and on Twitter, Shifter of Shapes. And through that, you can probably find me on Instagram as well. I'm part of Trans Against Groomers and Gays Against Groomers. You know, I'm on Instagram as well, Shifter of Shape, but I just started. I don't have too many followers on Instagram. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was actually so organic and it flew so well. Like
that's how we try to do it. We like to have these natural conversations, you know.
It honestly makes me sad because I left the gay community and trans community, and living styles did so much damage to me because it was almost hard to like blend in and never have to talk about your gay past or trans past, you know. And it's almost like I lived all those 10 years of my life never being able to talk about it. I almost like put it away, but that experience never went away. I kind of never thought of it, never analyzed it because it was my defense mechanism not to have a cognitive dissonance. But now I'm finally getting a chance to talk about it, and thank you so much for having these conversations. Like it gives me hope in the community as well, that like we're outliers and we're part of in counterculture is we're outliers, right? Would you not agree?
Totally.
No, we appreciate you talking to us. And look, you know, we are always here to talk. If you want to talk with us, you know, off the show, someone to vent to. If you're ever in New York City and you want to hang out, we'd love to grab a drink and have some coffee. We think you're a beautiful person, and you know, we respect what you're doing. We think what you're doing is incredibly brave, you know, and we commend you for it.
Thank you. What you're doing is brave too. And honestly, like going into this, I did not know that you guys were gay. I try not to research people, not to have judgment.
Yeah. It's nothing wrong with that, you know. And if anything, you know, I think it's good to leave the kind of mystery and excitement. Some men you can tell, some men you can't. And, you know, it just goes to show there is no right way to be gay. There's no right way to be a man. There's no right way to be a woman. You know, there are more common ways to be a man and more common ways to be a woman. And that's fine too. So,
and with that thought, I will thank everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate if you want to, and we will be back again soon with another one.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Later, guys.